The South Africa Depression and Anxiety Group says the country sees an estimated 23 suicides and 460 attempted suicides a day, with men in South Africa being 4 times more likely to die by suicide than women. There might be some relief for those who have reached a breaking point in a journal by author Nthabiseng Ngoepe, which seeks to offer practical guidance towards positive living. Well, she joins me now in studio to share her inspiration. Nthabiseng, really good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Hugo.
Now let's talk about suicide. You had a personal struggle with suicide. What led to it, and how did you achieve a point where you felt, you know, I'm strong enough to carry on with my life?
Well, I had 3 attempts at taking my life. The first was relational, the second also relational, and that was the breakdown of my first marriage. The first was just as a teenager when my relationship fell apart at that time. And naturally, I thought I cannot live without this guy. And my third suicide attempt was economical. I had lost my job, and that for me put me in a situation where I could not face the world. You know, moving from a successful practitioner in the legal space and now suddenly to be unemployed. I could not handle that. And of course, you know, getting to a point where I can say I am strong, you know, not to even think I can act on those thoughts again. It mainly centered on finding myself, you know, knowing who I am, you know, knowing the voice within me that must speak to me when I am down. And that is where we find that most people who don't have a concrete substance of who they are, a definition of who they are, what they stand for, what their passions are likely to give in to those thoughts.
So are some people more prone to suicidal thoughts than other people?
I would say that, you know, it's a journey for everyone. It depends on how really one handles difficulties. And we have different ways of dealing with challenges. And in the journal, I mainly take anyone who is facing anything. And I say, firstly, that the journal is for everyone, because we all have issues that we are dealing with. And the crux of the issue and the defining distinguishing matter becomes, are you likely to act on it, or are you likely to find alternative ways of dealing with your difficulties?
Now, obviously for you, it was a process over time. It started when you were a young woman, and obviously to a stage where you were grown. What were the phases during that time that you went through, up to the point where you decided, I'm strong enough to live, I want to live, and put those thoughts behind you?
Anxiety, firstly, you know, anxious as to, you know, who do I belong to? Who will love me? Who will have a sustainable relationship with me? Because, as I said, mainly the first 2 attempts were relational. So that was the main focus for me, feeling that no one really embraces me. And moving from that to a depressive state where I felt really no one bothers to love me, and misinterpreting what I thought was just genuine interest in me, interest in what I did to love. And that led me to depression as well. So one really just moved through a couple of phases, you know, even driving me to alcoholism, promiscuity, and those were some of the phases that I found myself, you know, dealing as an adult in. And to a large extent, one must be able to, you know, have self-awareness. And that is where I am at now, where I'm able to spot I am quickly drifting back to those thoughts. I'm quickly drifting back to a depressive state. And that is what distinguishes the Nthabiseng then and the Nthabiseng now.
Well, Nthabiseng now is an author, and you've got those 2 books. If I could just have a look at those two publications. And you've got a journal here, Maintaining Your Joy, and then you've got The Mending of a Broken Vessel. Now talk to us about what's led to the publication or development of these 2 books. Well,
my latest and second release, it's Maintaining Your Joy, a journal for daily positive living. But the story of maintaining your joy is not complete without the mending of a broken vessel. And in actual fact, that is where it starts. You know, taking viewers through the chronicle of my journey from young, being a young child in a broken home, how I lost myself, and how that started, you know, me on a quest of, I want to be loved, I want to find a place of belonging. And we get to a phase where I've been able to express myself through Maintaining Your Joy. And maintaining your joy was my way of reaching out, of attempting to help myself. And this was at a point where I had lost my mother-in-law, and I quickly spotted I'm slipping into that depressive state. I'm quickly going back to that anxiety state. And I looked around me and I thought, let me bring something to life. And that is where Maintaining Your Joy started. It started with me penning down my feelings on a day-to-day basis.
Now, you talk about many things. You talk in the book about a fractured family. You also talk about establishing boundaries in our personal lives. How do boundaries contribute to this journey? If
one does not have a set of boundaries, you don't have a way of communicating to the world how to relate with you. And that is very imperative. Otherwise, people will just step on your toes, and you will not have a way of saying, hang on, this does not work for me. So establishing your boundaries mainly has to do with how you educate people as to how to treat you, as to how you will deal with them. And it's not a bad thing, really, to say, this will work for me, this will not work for me. If you want to have a good relationship with me, I expect you to observe the following lines. And there's nothing wrong, really, with that. And unfortunately, for most of us, we have not been taught to articulate that, and it comes across as being rude. But it's really not.
Now, I have a question, and that's around strength of character, right? Because the world, unfortunately, is a horrible place. There are many awful people out there who don't care about your boundaries or any boundaries that I might have. Their idea is just to depress, suppress how we feel, etc. Now, how does one build themselves to a point where they can stand up and be strong against this, what could be huge volumes of negative thoughts that they might have or negative influences of people around them?
The first thing is having a sense of values. What is important to you, what you will relate for, what you are willing to walk away for. And that is very important. If knowing how to take proper care of yourself. And it starts there. If you don't know what you stand for, you don't know what is a deal breaker for you, you end up absorbing and taking everything. Now, for me, personally, what spoke to me was finding a relationship with God. And that is where I was able to stand up and say, I know who I am. I know that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I know that God has a purpose for me. I know that I'm on a journey, and I know that I'm supposed to impact other people. So those voices that came later on in my life, trying to condemn me, trying to take me down, I realized I can actually stand for myself, because the most important voices that I had were my own.
Now, something else you talk about is gratitude versus the never-ending problems. We all have problems, but you talk about the need to be grateful. Walk us through that process.
It starts with adapting the lens of your mind. If you see everything in a gloomy way and you see nothing that you can really be grateful for, it just, sets you on a course of depression. It sets you on a course of everything is so negative around me. But when things don't go well, you instead tilt the lens of your mind to see the blessing. I'm beyond that point in my life where I'm easily let down. I don't suffer disappointments much. If I'm in a commitment and that commitment is dropped, I'm let go, for instance, I always tell myself that, what can I do with my time? What good thing am I learning from this? Even from how people relate to me. I always look at it as, what lesson can I learn about myself? What lesson am I learning from this person? And I take that. So at the end of the day, I become grateful for the disappointments, and I become grateful even for the hurts, because I wouldn't be where I am. I am forged in fire because of the pain and the hurt. But I also learn people and learn to relate with them because of those disappointments as well.
Now, something else that you've come up with is monthly themes for well-being and mental health. We all know how important our mental health is.
That's true. On each individual month, I take readers through an individual focus point. And I would say that this month we are focusing on dealing with challenges. And I say to them, look at how you deal with challenges. Instead of feeling disappointment, rather rise up and learn a lesson. Look at the silver horizon, the rainbow in it all. And then another month we focus on, boundaries. Another month we focus on communicating honestly. And that is part of taking proper care of yourself, in the sense that move away from the expectations of the world. Move away from telling people that you're fine when you're not. Get to a point where you can communicate your feelings without feeling judged, without feeling that you are being a burden. And one of the things that is so dear to my heart that I touch on in the journal is how to deal with people. As an individual, listen to me when I need to be heard, because you could be saving my life in that second.
Now, you talk about purposeful living. What is purposeful living?
Oh, purposeful living is knowing why I'm here. It's knowing what does God want for my life. It's walking in those steps daily, because that guides you to say, this I will not do, this I will do. This doesn't serve my purpose, and this is not taking me anywhere. So it navigates your journey on a daily basis. If you're invited, and it starts with simple things. If you're invited to an event, you ask yourself, how does this serve or tie in with the journey that I'm walking? And if it's not, why should I go? It's that simple. Know why you are here.
Now, it's simple because you've walked the journey, right, over many years. How does the average person, a young teenager, for instance, I mean, the number of suicides that we've reported on the channel, where kids, learners in school, are faced with all sorts of embarrassing issues or issues that are that put them through pain, and they succumb to these thoughts to take their own lives, right? So how do you build that strength, that resolve, is the first question. And the second question is, how do you get rid of those people in your life that are potentially pushing you to these thoughts? Because a lot of it is about pressure, peer pressure.
Yes.
Right? There's certain people in your life, so whether you're a young person or a grown-up, that will put pressure on you to subscribe or ascribe to certain values or a certain way of life. And if you are failing, then sometimes the easiest thing is, you know what, let me just cop out, let me tap out and say goodbye.
The first thing would be finding your passion. Purpose is greatly tied to what you're passionate about. That thing that you love, that thing that you find yourself, drawn to, is most likely a purpose for you in it. And, we've got to encourage our children. We've got to encourage, from a very young age, that we don't be a society, as we are actually currently. We don't be that society that, negates everything that the child loves. Because in it, there may be something that they are growing into in the future. And with that, it starts, simple. It starts very small. If it's gardening that the child loves, let's take our children to the botanical places. If it's art that the child loves, let's encourage and nurture that. In that, a child finds a reason for living. In difficulties, a child finds something to look forward to that can, help them tune out the world. And that sort of answers your second question. You've got to be intentional about tuning out negativity. And if you look at it, it becomes difficult because negativity happens around you every day. But if you're not intentional to say, this I will not listen to, this I will not take into my spirit, this I will not take into my ear, then you're going to fall and ultimately get to a place where the world defines what and who you are.
Now, speaking of definitions, you attempted suicide 3 times. You've come out of it a stronger person. I'd imagine that there was a certain stigma associated or a certain label around those episodes that happened in your life. How did you stand up to those people around you that wanted to label you based purely on those 3 difficult episodes in your life? As ironic as it sounds, my giving my pain a voice, every challenge a voice, that tilted, how people started treating me. I was previously a victim. I was previously, accept me. I was previously, yes, I suffered hardship, but I'm good enough. But when I started giving all of that a voice, I sort of killed Goliath with the sword that he had for me. I became a champion for mental health. Why? Because of the pain that I suffered. And now instead of people shaming me, people can actually point to Nthabiseng and say, she's the face of mental health. And, I don't mean to say this in a funny way, Hugo, but as beautiful as I am, I've given mental health a face. People who are beautiful are no longer shy to say, I suffer from depression. And people who are not as beautiful as maybe the likes of me are not afraid to say, you know what, in as much as I feel horrible inside, I can also go and look for help. If it happened to Nthabiseng, it can happen to anyone. Absolutely fabulous words to wrap up the interview. Nthabiseng, appreciate your time this afternoon. And Nthabiseng Ngoepe is the author of The Mending of a Broken Vessel.